Cybersecurity has always been a cat and mouse game. As long as humans have been around, it's a continuous game of attack and defend.
As AI helps teams ship code faster, where do those existing approaches still fall short? And are we also creating more vulnerabilities and more noise for security teams right now as before?
There's a couple of factors that go into it. One is just the sheer speed. Like, even if your quality of code is the same or even slightly better, if you're producing 3-4 times the rate of code, you're just introducing more vulnerabilities.
Why do you believe software security is becoming the new bottleneck in the age of AI-generated code?
Like with every powerful technology, there's always a good side and a bad side, or a threat and an opportunity at the same time. The rate at which we write code is like 3x, 4x, and maybe it will even increase more.
You use the term self-securing software, right? What does that actually mean?
It's almost like power to the agents, let the agents take over. And it's in many industries, right? Where instead of letting humans do the job, we now go and use agents. Even in the real world, we're kind of moving to it with all of the new wave of robots that is coming that will do all of our chores and a lot of work.
How do you think the role of the developer and the role of security team changes over the next 2 years?
Yes, they are becoming more like orchestrators of code writing, whether it's maybe inside an IDE or you just launched a bunch of agents to code overnight. I think maybe goes to the earlier point where the expert developers or the expert orchestrators will reap the most benefits.
Hi, I'm Kim Isenberg, Superintelligence Editor-in-Chief. Today I'm excited to welcome Roeland Delrue, co-founder, COO, CRO of Aikido Security. Roeland, it's a pleasure to meet you. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. And indeed, a lot of expensive titles, but in reality, I'm the commercial co-founder of Aikido. And what I in practice do is I talk a lot with customers, partners, vendors, basically a lot of the external facing people that we work together with and partner with. And so we do software security, meaning from the moment that code gets written, whether it's by humans or AI or a hybrid of the two, all the way to the apps being live and being used by users and customers, and everything in between. That's what we call the software development lifecycle. It used to be a long cycle, but now with vibe coding, it has shortened or quickened a lot, if you will.
Right, you already brought up a lot of topics we are talking about today. And Aikido is one of Europe's fastest rising cybersecurity startups, right? And today we'll explore how AI-generated code is reshaping software security and why it may be becoming the next bottleneck in development. So let's start with the big picture right away. Why do you believe software security is becoming the new bottleneck in the age of AI-generated code?
With every powerful technology, there's always a good side and a bad side, or a threat and an opportunity at the same time. But the sheer excitement and embracement of AI in general, and then Gen AI more specifically for code generation, has been incredible, not to say the least. The rate at which we write code is like 3x, 4x, and maybe it will even increase more. We can notice it in our statistics because we scan code, and we can see that companies are producing a lot more code. Even if they hired more developers or less developers, there's an increase. We also see that the way that code is written is sometimes a little bit different than if a human would write it purely by themselves. We see that the PRs, which are like the pieces of work that are delivered, often are a little bit more bloated as well, and a little bit more complex. And so it introduces also a lot of new attack factors, and basically to keep up, it's a little bit fighting fire with fire. And cybersecurity has always been a cat and mouse game. As long as humans have been around, it's a continuous game of attack and defend. But just like the sheer speed of it all and the complexity of it all like has taken a couple of levels up in the last year or so.
Yeah, and you already mentioned, I mean, vibe coding has like really lift off in the last months. So what changed in software development over the last 12 to 18 months that makes this problem feel especially urgent right now? I assume there are like, for example, Claude Code comes up in your mind or something like this, right?
The products have gotten a lot better and the models have gotten a lot better. So we've been experimenting with LLMs the moment they came out. And then I remember sitting next to the developers. Back when we were a smaller startup, I was literally sitting next to them. I could see them like prompt ChatGPT to like help them out, and then they might copy paste something. And then the IDEs started embracing this in the shape of add-ons. And so the products have become like more and more user-friendly to just like embed it in your workflows. But I think maybe even more important, the quality of the models and what they produce has like it's night and day with a year ago or something. Whereas before not too long ago, like a year, you would always have to like double check and question before you would copy paste something. Now it's getting closer to autopilot, and so that's definitely an evolution, or it has reached that critical point where people start to blindly trust it, and the UX and the products have allowed us to vibe away. So yes.
Fantastic. But before we delve deeper into the technical aspect, let's focus a little bit on the company you're working for and with. So for people hearing about Aikido for the first time, you founded the company in Ghent, not in Tel Aviv or Silicon Valley. What made you believe a European team without a traditional cybersecurity background could compete in this space, and what problem are you trying to solve more concretely?
While what you say is true, we weren't looking at the space in that way when we got started. We were scratching our own itch, meaning we had a problem and we couldn't get it solved, and we came at a point where we were like, hey, maybe we should try to solve this problem ourselves. And the problem that we face is that we've been building software for the last 12 years, or the 12 years before Aikido. We've been building fintech apps, HR apps, all kinds of apps that hold sensitive data, where we collect data in our cloud environments. And our customers expected us that we do all of that in a secure way. And so we found ourselves in the market for code scanners, cloud scanners, static testers, dynamic testers, code quality, secret scanning, like, and so on and so on. There's like, in that software development lifecycle that we were talking a little bit about, there's like many different places and many different scanners and many different. It was like not fun to select these scanners because you always want to compare 3 or 4. They're typically enterprise focused. They're typically sticker shocking, meaning like they won't tell you the price until all the way at the end. So like we lost or spent a lot of time on evaluating vendors, and then once we got them, we found that they were very often hard to use. Like they would literally make you feel dumb, and like nobody likes to feel dumb. And I felt like I had to have a PhD in cybersecurity to like understand what was going on. And I think a lot of these cyber products out there, they're like F-35 fighter jets, and they can do all kinds of maneuvers, but you need 3 months of training to understand what's going on. And then you need to be incredibly skilled in operating the machine. Like that's a little bit how cyber felt to us. And with software democratizing and compliance also trickling down, like the ISOs and the SOC 2s, and nobody's escaping anymore from having to do proper security. And so we felt like we could help democratize that security side of things. And that's how we got started, combining different scanning areas, taking out the false positives, which is like a major difficulty, and then making it user-friendly. And then off we went, and here we are now.
Yeah, and you already mentioned it, right? There are a lot of companies already using scanners, pen tests, and AI security tools. But as AI helps teams ship code faster, where do those existing approaches still fall short? And are we also creating more vulnerabilities and more noise for security teams right now as before?
There's a couple of factors that go into it. One is just the sheer speed. Like even if your quality of code is the same, or even slightly better if you're producing 3-4 times the rate of code. You're just introducing more vulnerabilities because of it. Also, the models have been trained on human written code, like they're trained on the world's knowledge, and so the world and humans are coding with secrets in it, with SQL injection in it, with whatever 25 other classes of vulnerabilities that we introduced. So if we did it for ever since we started coding, the models will do it as well. There's the aspect of hallucination as well that is still in there, and so there's all kinds of human-like flaws that need to be covered. Now we are getting better, right? The models are getting better at writing better code, but even then, like a lot of the world runs on legacy. Banks run on COBOL. That's like a very ancient language, but once a language is producing money, that's sometimes how I refer to it. It's very hard to take that code away because like a business is running on it, a business activity is running on it, and it's generating revenue. Like you don't want to like cut out the machine and just like swap out the language or swap out the things. So when you're producing new code, a lot of that gets bolted on top legacy, and there's always unforeseen network effects or supply chain effects. And even if you write the most perfect code today with 0 CVEs, it might be that tomorrow new CVEs are found. And so while your code yesterday was deemed perfect, tomorrow they found a CVE and it's not perfect anymore. So there's a continuous stream of vulnerabilities and security going on.
I'm just curious because you mentioned it and brought it up. What is in your perspective the bigger problem? Hallucinations from models or human mistakes for being a threat?
What I've seen is that the best developers or the most senior developers, when you give them the powerful tools, meaning the Gen AI tools that they have access to in their IDE or CLIs, like they become even more effective. But I've also seen the opposite, where a junior engineer that isn't like fully aware of the actions that are being taken can also like be amplified in the bad stuff, if you will. And so that's an interesting observation that has been happening.
Yeah, right. You used the term self-securing software, right? What does that actually mean in simple terms?
Yes. It's almost like power to the agents, or let the agents take over. And it's in many industries, right? Where instead of letting humans do the job, we now go and use agents. Even in the real world, we're kind of moving to it with all of the new wave of robots that is coming that will do all of our chores and a lot of work for us.
Hopefully sooner than later, right?
I mean, there's a little scary aspect to it, but I wouldn't mind that they water my plants and pick up my mail, right? But where the self-securing comes from is that what we initially built last year was a pen test. A pen test is a very commonly known artifact, often in the shape of a PDF report. And what goes into that PDF report is people trying to break in and ethically hack the application, basically. But what a lot of companies realize is that often that's too late, and then you want to catch these things more early on. And you also don't want to do one pen test a year, which is what typically happens. You ideally want to continuously pen test. And so the bigger the company, the bigger the budget, the more they can move towards like having continuous testing, and often then it was done by people. But we've basically built an agentic version. So now we can run continuous pen tests, and agents have the advantage that they never sleep. They don't need to go on holiday. They cannot become sick. They can be indefinitely scaled with the same level of quality, which is not always the case with human beings. And it's not always about like displacing humans. I'm not here to like say that we are like always fully gonna displace full departments, but it can also be a help, because what we actually see is that a lot of pen testing companies or red teams are understaffed, or they have more demand than supply. And so this can be a real powerful tool. And so what happens is that we have these automatic pen testing agents, But we also have remediation agents. We've actually had these before we had the pen testing agents because we were already doing code security, and so we already had auto-fixing capabilities. And so we've applied those to the pen testing. And so now it's like a continuous thing of agents finding stuff, other agents with other models and other instructions fixing them. Then we have retest agents that will try to bypass and hack the fix that the other agents came up with. And so they're continuously roaming the application, finding and fixing. And you can put that on a never-ending journey, basically.
Right. And I can imagine that the more code is being generated, the more demand in cybersecurity occurs, right? Because, I mean, you mentioned displacement, and this is like also an important topic because many people are scared of losing their jobs. But in this regard of cybersecurity, on the other hand, I can imagine it's the exact opposite because there's a higher demand that is even increasing a lot, right?
In general, yes. And the moment of this recording, it's April 9th. Yesterday or the day before, the Mythos model of Anthropic came out, found a bunch of... So we can already expect, maybe by the time that this recording comes out, I don't know, that a lot of CVEs will get uncovered because there's a new depth that we can reach with this automated scanning or LLM-powered scanning. And so there will be a new slew of CVEs. You can also see it like the number of CVEs. It's an upward going graph. They're not going down. There's only more. And we at Aikido, we scan 15 different open source ecosystems. NPM, PyPy are among the most known ones. And so we scan them for malware, meaning if they have not been tampered with, because these open source, if they've been tampered with, they can lead to supply chain attacks. Shai Hulud and the Axios one were two of the more recent ones that were known. And last year, this time around, we were scanning about 30,000, so 30K of these packages a day. Now it's 100,000. So
Really?
also just in the open source, yes. Those are our internal numbers. Yeah. So we can see that just you could probably find this in independent research as well, that the sheer amount at which the world is writing and publishing open source software to these package managers and ecosystems is also like in an ever increasing trend. So yeah, there's we're gonna have to keep up with the industry, and I think we'll be able to do that, right? Like security has been around as long as humans have been around, and it's always this cat and mouse, but it just maybe faster than ever at this point.
Yeah, you already mentioned some examples, but I'm very curious. Could you walk us through a very concrete example of how a customer is actually using Aikido Infinite in practice?
What they typically do is they start off with a standalone full pen test, meaning they will also typically do that white box, meaning that the agents that will do the pen testing have access to the code base. That makes them a lot more effective. And it's an unfair advantage that they have compared to humans, because agents can like read the code while they're pen testing, basically, or at a much faster pace than a human would be able to do. And so what they first do is run a full test where we're talking about hundreds of agents, like typically 400, 500, 600, that we unleash, and they will go over the entire application. They will kind of map out the code. They will kind of make like almost an inventory, and then they will start to attack. And then once that full test has run, you have like your full pen test, which on its own is already great, but that forms the basis to then go into a continuous pen testing mode, because now they have the full context of that code base of your application. Maybe you also tweaked it a little bit left and right to give them more relevant context. And from now, every release that happens, so every time you ship a new update, you will kind of do a mini pen test on the go that will run and work automatically. And then from there on out, that flow of the auto-remediation, the auto-retesting, and then testing again when a new release comes. That's how it works in practice. And what the gain for the customer is, so to say, is that in the call it the old world. It was sometimes too expensive or too much scheduling to have humans pen test every release. So what people rely on, and still largely rely on, is scanners. So they will use a static code scanner, they will use a dynamic scanner, but the problems or the challenges that these traditional scanners have is they have a very bad signal to noise ratio, meaning they will find 40 things, 400 things, but only like 5% of them will be actually real. And it's because for deterministic or old school scanners, it's very hard to go down the path of exploitability. And a static scanner works very different than a dynamic scanner. But with agents, we can bring those worlds together because they continuously go and look at the code. And if they see something, they will not just report it like an old school scanner. They will immediately go and try to exploit it in a dynamic fashion. And so for the people on the call that are a little bit familiar with security, sometimes we refer to these things as SAST and DAST. And now you have kind of like a SAST and DAST wrapped in one, AI powered, which makes that they're continuously validating their findings. And so the results that they come up with are real because they proved that you can exploit it. And now so you get, instead of a list of 40 findings or 400 findings, you get to a list of, here are the two things, the two security vulnerabilities. And by the way, here's already a fix for it. And by the way, the fix is already being patched. So it's like that flow on its own, it's a game changer for the company and how they go about securing their software.
Right. You already brought it up. A few days ago, Anthropic revealed officially their Claude Mythos model.
Yes.
For example, it found a 27-year-old exploit in OpenBSD, for example. I'm curious, what's your take on it? Was it like a shocking moment? What was your impression when they revealed it?
Actually, quite the opposite. It's still impressive to see, right? But whenever the models were reaching a level, we've been using them continuously and first in very controlled environments when they were still like less mature, and then as they matured, we could feel and see it. We never train models at Aikido. We used the frontier models, and then everything that we do and build is around the architecture, the guardrails, the prompting, the sequencing, and all of that. But it's very easy for us to swap out a model, or whenever a new model comes around, to like plug it in and see how it behaves. So we already know for longer than a year that they're capable of scanning code or finding vulnerabilities. And then as the models got better, also Claude started realizing that. And then basically they turned it into more of a product, and then the product marketing of Claude Code Security. And Mythos is kind of like, with the next level model, it's kind of like the epiphany or the Claude Code on steroids. And so in that sense, I wasn't surprised that if you throw more horsepower at it, they also spent 20K in tokens on it. They ran it for 1,000 times. And so it was to be expected that, well, A, if they were first going to come out with it, that they found something. Otherwise, they would probably not have published it. But then B, that, you know, they would be able to find something. But the good thing, like, to maybe plug a little bit my own company here, today, if you were to go to LinkedIn, we found a bunch of 0 days ourselves with our own AI pen testing. So we're doing similar things, and we're finding similar things. And the moment we also get our hands on some of these more powerful models, we will be able to find similar things. And actually, it's a massive opportunity because from our customers, we have about 2,500 paying customers. We have their code, we have their cloud, we have their domains. Like we have that full software development lifecycle. We know them very well, and with I mean our agents know them very well. And so if you unleash these powerful models with all of the context that we can give it and the expertise that we've built for the security use case of LLMs, like we'll be able to also find similar or even like more things because of that context. And so it's going to be an incredible opportunity, next to the fact that these models in the world will also find new CVEs that will need patching but yeah, it's exciting to see the sheer power of the models. And then hopefully we can bring it down from 1,000 scans and 20K to 20 cents and 10 scans or something. Yeah.
I mean, the inference costs are dropping like, I think 10 to 100x a year. So hopefully next year we'll have a cheaper Mythos clone in our hands, right?
Hopefully, yeah. It's interesting, maybe a small sidetrack to... We also keep an eye on the open source models. And they're lagging behind, but they're also not standing still, and they're not lagging behind by years, more like quarters. So
6
it's
months.
going to be interesting to see. Yeah.
What's your favorite? What do you think has the most potential on the open source?
I don't have a favorite, as in we're multi-model and we use different models and even different versions of models, meaning like sometimes there's a mini or a nano version. So we for certain tasks out of our we let the benchmarks decide. Like I don't even have an opinion.
Right.
Like for certain benchmarks we use anthropic models, because for certain use cases that we've seen, for certain SAST rewriting, code rewriting, we use certain anthropic models. But then for certain aspects of the pen testing, we will use GPT models, because we've effectively seen that their agents, or the frontier model that powers the agents, is just better for that use case than the anthropic ones, or the Llama or the Gemini or the whatever ones. But we've also swapped them out already. We've changed models. So if whenever Gemini comes out with a new one, or it doesn't really matter, we will try it out. And then within the models, like there were certain aspects that were still running on GPT 4.5, because we were reaching all of the quality levels that we needed to. There were no complaints by customers. The speed was good as well, and it was at a lower cost than the newer models. So we didn't have a reason to like change it out. It's only when we see that it can be faster and cheaper and higher quality, or when that triangle or that mix gets
the
better,
holy
that we
grail,
move.
so to say.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it's a mix without necessarily having favorites, if you will.
Right. So, but let's stay for a second with Anthropic. Just last week, Anthropic accidentally leaked the full source code of Claude Code through an NPM package, and researchers almost immediately found a critical vulnerability that could be exploited through prompt injection. What does an incident like that tell you about how fast the attack surface is expanding around AI development tools?
The last year, I'm still unsure what the relationship is between AI and all of these new supply chain attacks. I'm sure that the makers of these supply chain attacks obviously they will use agents and LLMs to craft it, but there's been so many new worms and rats and without getting too technical, techniques that are being used through IDE extensions, through GitHub actions, through through skills, AI skills. So the attack surface is like bleeding into and expanding itself to basically, by the end of the day, a lot that makes it to the developer machine. And so we've actually started to like look away from NPM, not NPM, as we also still look at NPM obviously, but more like what else besides NPM makes it to that machine of the developer, because the supply chain from there can bring it into the Git and the cloud. And so then we started looking at Chrome extensions and started looking at a whole other bunch of common used tools, skills, add-ons that developers install. And so those are now the things that we monitor for, as well, prompt injections or potential for prompt injections, for example. On Anthropic leaking, honestly, I don't know. I think they're, from the outside, they seem to be very good at product marketing, because when they announced the Cloud Code Security, it was basically just a wrapper around their security vulnerability scanning, which was already good, right?
Right.
We knew already that it was good. Everybody in the industry knew it was good, but the world didn't know. So then they they basically announced it as Cloud Code Security, and all of a sudden, CrowdStrike goes down with 10% on the stock market. And I'm like, wow, for a product positioning of an existing capability, that's quite the effect. And every time a new model comes out, like not only Anthropic, but like OpenAI does this as well. Like there's like, oof, this is the most powerful one, and it's getting dangerous, and like people are, you know, they're riling up people a little bit, like, oof, we've reached peak AI, but then they've been saying that since GPT-2 and then GPT-3 and like, but the world keeps on like eating it up, and so when the first second that I heard, yeah, the Claude thing is leaked, I'm like, yeah, they just did it on purpose because they're masters at planning their PR and influencing the stock market. So I'm still unsure if it was real or planned or on purpose or not on purpose. Maybe they're just gonna turn it into their open source model for in 6 months, and then they'll have a new frontier model. I don't know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It feels a little bit. So the leak felt a little bit amateurish, too amateurish for a company like Anthropic, and I think it has to be like read into the context of the upcoming IPO, right? And I mean, they're all marketing genius, OpenAI, Anthropic, and yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, because the new model also leaked, right? The
Anyway, we already talked a little bit about the displacement and the need for human cybersecurity workers in the industry, but what can AI realistically automate in security today, and where do humans still need to stay firmly in control in your?
I think with many things, and even before AI, like when just automation in general, you start with the most mundane or the most automatable things. And so the LLMs are really good at understanding code. So they're really good at triaging. So when there's false positives have always been and still are a challenge in cybersecurity. So using agents to validate and triage is a very, very powerful use case. Agents and LLMs are very good at writing code. So they're really good at rewriting and fixing the code to remediate the vulnerability. That's maybe more on the LLM-ish side. But then the moment agents came around and you give agents access to terminals and browsers, we found out that they're really good at navigating, which is what you need for the pen testing use case. But the navigating could also be used in many other use cases outside of security. Like you could do it for QA testing as well, for example, or you could use it for mapping out or scraping or whatever. The agents are really good at those parts, and then they can work out flows and sequences. So now, because they can remediate, because they can scan, because they can navigate, if you put all of that in a flow where, like now you're getting to the self-securing software thing. That's high level where the AI is being used, and there's so many other use cases where you could use it for. There's so many parts of cyber that we haven't touched upon today, like everything identity and access management, data security, email security, like you name it. Yeah.
And I mean, if AI keeps writing more of the code, which we can expect definitely, how do you think the role of the developer and the role of security team changes over the next 2 years? I assume they will change dramatically, don't they?
Yes, they are becoming more like orchestrators or of code writing, whether it's maybe inside an IDE or you just launched a bunch of agents to code overnight. I think maybe goes to the earlier point where the expert developers or the expert orchestrators will reap the most benefits when they know what they're doing. And it's a skill that we now see translating in non-development. So the marketing person that is the best with like setting all of this up, that doesn't need to be a developer anymore, that can use it for email automation, email personalization, prospect researching, or let's take it to the other side of the company, to finance and accounting and mapping out tickets and making bookings. There's the people that have the courage, the interest, the knowledge, or trying to educate them on how to cobble a lot of this together will be the operators of the future, if you will. And so that's kind of where we're going. And yesterday I saw a new fun app that You don't even have to prompt anymore. So it's a bot that joins in on your brainstorms, like the conversation that we're having.
Yeah.
And we're discussing our new, let's say, CRM app, and it needs to be doing this, and that. And maybe we're with 5 in a conversation, and all 5 are contributing on like, no, but in that case it should do this, or yeah, but if that happens, then this should happen. And while that conversation is going on, it's vibe coding on the side your app. Like you can see it come to life as you're brainstorming for an hour.
Really?
And then you can do another, then you can use it, and then you do another brainstorm session like, yeah, this didn't work, that didn't work. And that's how software comes to life now these days. So.
Right. I mean, it's interesting, fascinating. It's not that it's a revolutionary new breakthrough, but it's like a new way to use models, right? Entering them, the conversation, on the fly, creating what you're talking about. This is an interesting glimpse into the future. Yeah.
It brings it closer to being human. Like, why do we ask LLMs to turn research in a podcast? It's because when 2 people interact like we are doing right now, it makes more for this interesting Q&A style versus a monologue where somebody's just reading out loud. If somebody's reading out loud for 10 minutes, you zone out. But if there's an engaging conversation, that's when people get triggered, they listen, and it's the same thing with the brainstorm. So like, if you're prompting away by yourself or writing a spec, you might get to something, but if you're interacting with your peers, that's when creativity comes, when spark comes, and then that gets immediately translated, including with a tone of voice and excitement level, into the LLM's vibe coding along the way. It's a very intimate way of creating something.
Yeah, I mean, the next step would be that we join Notebook LM for the discussion, right? So like the agents talk with us, not do with them. But anyway, do you think we're moving toward a world where software can actually secure itself continuously, or is that still more vision than reality?
Yes, we're moving there. Yes, it's going to happen. Will that mean that nothing's going to ever be attackable? Everything's hackable. Even Fort Knox could be broken into.
True.
It's often it's often about economics and finance in the end. Meaning, what is the worth or the resources you as an attacker are willing to pour in to get to your goal of extracting or taking something? And basically, what security is, besides actual securing, it's disencouraging the attacker, because you're like, look at my firewall, look at my agents, look at my, like, you don't have any shot when you're going to try to attack me, so go and move on to the next one in line that is maybe weaker positioned than me. But so the economics thing will always hold true, even in the year 2050 or the year 2100, and attack surface always moves and expands, and it's gonna keep on. Maybe we'll get closer in closing the gap, but there will always be a gap. It's just how humans and society works, I guess.
I hope so. We need something to do, right? Otherwise it would be a little bit boring.
Yes, that as well, yeah.
But so before we wrap this up, is there anything we haven't covered that you think our community should know about, whether it's about Aikido, about the state of software security, or something else entirely?
What I find interesting is how there's a lot of democratization going on. I think maybe Lovable is the most known one, because you make non-developers into developers. And in a similar fashion, Aikido is on a mission to democratize the software security. We have 2,500 paying customers. We have about 50,000 non-paying ones. We have a direct integration with Lovable. We have a free version that anyone can install. And so, as it's an interesting trend on like power to the developer and power to the people in a broader sense. And so there's a lot of democratization happening while the world is becoming less democratizing. And so a trend that has been happening is sovereignty. sovereignty of data, sovereignty of control, as the world is breaking up a little bit more and is becoming less international. It's very interesting to see those two opposite trends of democratization happening at the same time, and being a player in that field and being a human or a citizen in that field. And that's very interesting to see where those forces will take us 1 year from now, 2 years from now. So it's maybe more of a thought to leave you with, and rather an insight, but yes.
Yeah, and I really like the thought you brought up, because in a way your way of democratizing this way of security, it pays off in a very positive way. You're one of the very few recent unicorns in Europe. So yeah, this way and this philosophy pays off very good, right? So yeah, amazing, fantastic, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, Roeland, it was such a pleasure meeting you. Aikido, fantastic story. All the best for the future. It was lovely talking to you. Thank you very much, Roeland.
Thank you too. All right, bye-bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.